Welcome, folks. It's 2 minutes after the hour. I think I'm going to get started here with the hope that more people will join in as we go. Just to think many people might have seen me at previous webinars. My name is Harry Hockheiser, the director of the MIDAS Coordination Center. This is our December webinar, which we're going to do something slightly different to have a sort of a panel discussion on job search tips for faculty positions. This was requested by some folks in our student group, and I think it's a great topic, and one that those of us who have sort of been through this process in various ways can relate to the challenge that it faces when you're just doing it for the first time. And I don't know what anybody else's experience is like, but I can confidently say that even though it's been more than 15 years since my last academic job interview, they all are still very vivid in my mind. And I can remember a lot of what that stress of that experience was like going through it. So hopefully it will be something that we can provide some insight on and help answer some of the questions you might have. So we've got on with us a bunch of folks who are both sort of junior people who are looking for that first position and more senior people who have either been in faculty positions for a while and some who have been involved in searches. And so I think this will hopefully give some variety of perspectives. And what we're going to do is we're going to go around the room and we're going to let everybody introduce themselves very briefly. And then we're going to let the students on the panel sort of, or the job seekers, I should say, because I don't know whether people are students or postdocs or whatever, but the job seekers ask the questions and guide the conversation, and then let the folks who are the more senior folks on the other side of things provide their answers and discuss as best possible. And I'll throw in some questions as well. If you have any questions in the audience, please feel free, put something in the chat, put in the Q&A, and I will try to flag that and get it into the conversation as early as possible. And might ask you to come off mute and ask the question directly, but let's just take it that way and we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to go sort of around my screen in sort of a modified clockwise order and call on people to introduce themselves. So I'll start with Julia.
Yes, thank you so much. So I'm Julia, I'm a postdoc. I'm a third year of a postdoc at Georgetown University in Shweta Bansal Lab, and I'm actually currently looking for assistant professorship, like a tenure track position.
Great, Rafa.
Hi everyone. I'm losing my voice today. Sorry. My name is Rafa. I'm a postdoc at the Yale University with Nathan Gruba. And yes, I'm looking for a job position as assistant professor.
Lisa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Wallace. I'm a professor at Old Dominion University, which is in Virginia, and I'm actually a plant biologist. So to give some perspective on those of you who may be applying to a biology department, who your materials need to reach as well.
Great, thank you. Holly.
Hi, I'm Holly Gath. I'm also at Old Dominion University. I am a department chair and professor in biological sciences, but my background and my degrees are in mathematics. And so I kind of crossed that dark side to biology. So anyways, thanks.
Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex Perkins. I'm an associate professor at the University of Notre Dame. I've been in my position for going on 11 years now, and I've been on, I think, 4 or 5 different search committees within our department on a variety of different topics and of different sizes. So I've sort of seen a number of things, and yeah, I'm happy to be here today and answer questions.
Great. Josh?
Hi, everyone. My name's Josh Colston. I'm an epidemiologist and an assistant professor at the University of Virginia School of Medicine. I've been in my position for 2 years.
Lucas.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lucas. I'm an assistant professor of mathematics at Oklahoma State University here in Stillwater since 2022. So I am in the middle of my tenure track. So I've been here for 3 years.
Wonderful. And Tom?
Yeah, Tom McAndrew. I'm assistant professor at Lehigh University for 4 years. And because I started when I knew college was starting here, I think I've been a part of something like 10 to 15 searches for various positions.
Wow.
Yep, happy to talk about those.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, and I guess I should say, I'm here at University of Pittsburgh. I've been in the Department of Biomedical Informatics since 2009, and I've probably done 6 or 7 searches in that time that I've been part of in various ways. So let's start off with our trainees. Julia and Rafa, what are the questions you're most struggling with, or you most want to find some answers to?
Yeah. Yes, like if you want, Rafa, I can start. I think the big challenge, like at the beginning, like the first time that you approach like application, is understand how to structure the material. For me, that was like a big thing. And so like my question, I think, is how long do they expect to be the research and the teaching statement? Because most of the application, they don't have guidelines. So like, in my situation was like the first that I wrote was for an application that I had guidelines on the number of page. There was 3. And then I used this number as like rule of thumb for all my other applications. But I've never been sure that was too long or not. So I think that's my first question. And then a second one that I would be very curious to know from panelists is what are the elements that of like the CV of like that you look like that's the first thing that you look in the application that cannot miss to be to get like a Zoom on-site interview.
Okay, so panel members, please feel free to jump in.
I'll jump in. This is Lisa to answer at least the first question about, how long should your statements be? So we are currently running a search in my department, and I'm chair of that search committee. And we specifically limited the length of the teaching statement and the research statement to 2 pages because there is a lot of variation. I would say, 3 is still seems quite reasonable to me. If you're going into 4, 5, 6, there's a good chance that that's not going to get read. As a search committee member, an application consists of oftentimes minimally a dozen pages, usually more on the order of 20 plus pages. And if you think about how much that it takes to review one application, we all have other jobs to do as well. And so there can be limited time in reviewing those. So I think, get to the point in those documents up front. And I would suggest, what is your overall area of interest, whether that's research or teaching? What have you done, and what do you want to do at that next job, the job that you're applying for?
Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I would just say that when a job ad doesn't specify, I would say think strategically about this. And on the one hand, Lisa's offering you some strategy about not making it too long. But let's say that you're applying to a university that is pretty research focused. It's an R1 university. I actually think it could be a little risky to only submit a 2-page research statement. I would probably go more for 3. Because they're going to want to see that you have some plans and ideas developed. And I feel like sometimes 2 may not be enough. Although, again, it depends on the nature of the position. Maybe some places you might want to have a little more beefy teaching statement, for example, if that's more of an emphasis. So, that's what I'll add.
Great. Tom.
Yeah, I would say that yeah, for the like some of the strongest research statements that I've seen applicants write have been something like a page and a half or 2 pages plus a third page that's essentially something like a specific aims for like a project that they want to do as an assistant professor. So it's sort of like here's what I've been doing, what I'm an expert in, and then here's what I'm going to be, here's what I want to do if I come to the university, on my first contract, and then here's a sample of what that might look like in terms of a proposal. Those are some of the strongest ones only because the reason I say that is because it gives a very clear idea about what you want to do.
Like,
So I'll tackle a little bit of the second question. I think the first one, I agree with all the answers that were given. There's a little nuancing there. But the CV question is more to me, the biggest thing you can do to help yourself is just number things, right? So often when we're doing all the tallies and you're looking at up to 100 or 200 applicants, one of the metrics we have to have is how many publications do you have, right? And if you don't put numbers in there, you then force me to count. And then a lot of times people will also mix in ones that are not like in prep or whatever else. So I mean, I think if no matter how few the number is, it's just don't anger the search committee that's already doing a lot of work by making them also have to try to guess and figure out where it is and count all of the things. And so it's you're not hiding anything because we're gonna count them anyways. That's one thing that always jumps out at me when I'm looking at CVs.
That's a very important tip. I need to check my CV. I think that is numbered, but like, that's a very important.
I think just to generalize on that a bit, make it easy to go through the CV. Numbering may be part of that, but also just making sure there's enough space or that there's some clear structure in sections and subsections, or maybe a bit of annotation, but just make it easy to go through and for the search committee to find what they need to.
And the community service is also something that is relevant to add in the CV, because I feel that my CV is very long because, of course, I have all the publications and the contribute talk and the invited seminars and then the service. And so I feel that even me, that I know what I did, I'm lost in like the 3 pages. So I was curious to know what's the key element that need really to make very clear they are the most important that you look when you review CVs.
So let me also comment in terms of the commuting service. In my experience, strong part of my interview process and also the application was the fact that I still hold the social media work. So that was a big outreach effort I've been doing in the past years. So that it's interesting here at Oklahoma State, they really like that. And even nowadays, when I write my A&Ds, my annual development appraisal, this annual revisions that we do, the department head asks, how's your Instagram page going on? So it's something important for the university outreach. So if you do something, I would maybe not put a lot of lines on that, but not omit just to put that information. So I was surprised on how that was important and relevant for them.
I was just going to add that I don't think there's anything wrong with a long CV that's clear and well spaced versus I need to fit it all in 3 pages, so I'm going to make it font 6 or something like this. Like I wouldn't, don't feel like you have to do that for your CV. When I read somebody's CV for the position, I typically read what their PhD was in, so I understand what they've been trained in and whether or not sometimes I read it for fit, and then for other times, like Holly was saying, numbers, right? However fortunate or unfortunate that is.
Rafa, what's on your mind?
Yeah. So I think like one of the questions that comes to me, it's what is the most important element for each of the pieces that we have to prepare to apply? Like for example, like what is the most important elements for a CV in general? What is the most important elements for a research statement or a teaching statement? Things like this.
So since I'm not hearing an answer there, I'm going to jump in for just a second and say, as with the answers to these previous things, I don't think there is a single answer. I think that's going to be a function of who you are and what the position is. And I think this is a huge amount of work, but you could consider having different CVs, different statements, different materials for each position that are fine-tuned for those positions. And especially if you're applying for different kinds of things, to have the one statement that you send off to the R1 place, the other one that you send to the place that may have more teaching, the one that has the one that's a medical school, they could all be different in their emphasis. And slant your materials that way so that the things that are most relevant to the position are most visible.
Yeah, I have a kind of like a complementary question to this. Like, what make a CV or a research statement outstanding? Like, can you guys say some of like common elements that you see? Like, those are the elements that make an outstanding candidate for an application, for example.
I'll say that sometimes the discussions that we have are about what level of mentorship will this person need when they come into if we invited them on as faculty, right? Would they need an immense amount of training and mentorship, and can we provide that, right? So there's sort of this implicit probability calculation, like what is the probability that this person would succeed here at this institution within the next 5 years? And how much mentorship will they need to get to that point in those five years? So anything you can do to show like I have the requisite training, and if I was invited as an assistant professor, I would be able to get my job done with some guidance and mentorship, but not I don't want to say it's excessive, but something where you wouldn't need a lot of guidance, right? Something where you can show independence early would be, I think, for me, has always been a highlight for candidates that we brought in.
Alex?
Yeah, I think Tom really hit on what I think is maybe one of the most important takeaways that we could possibly have from this whole conversation is that committees want to evaluate your chance of success. They want to hire somebody who's going to be successful. As for the mentoring thing, I mean, mentoring is available and that's always going to be part of the process. But at least in my institution, I don't know about others, we don't want to hire someone who's going to require a lot of mentoring or who needs to be taught how to do the job. Now, they need some guidance and support, but they need to be capable of doing the job and hitting the ground running. Just to circle back to your question about the outstanding CV and research statement, I'm actually going to say that on the CV, I feel like in some ways there's not a whole lot you can do about that other than just to present it clearly and well. I mean, it's your cumulative record. So there's only so much you can do about it sort of at the last minute, right? But when it comes to the research statement, I think here is an opportunity to showcase that you are ready for the job. And a key part and a place where I often see applications fall short is they will focus too much on the past research and they don't articulate what their plans are. I've seen some applicants that I've been personally very excited about, but when I'm going to the rest of the committee and I'm trying to argue that, hey, this person's exciting, I don't have a lot to work with because I can't say what they're going to do. So in the research statement, there needs to be a substantial portion of that indicates that you've got a plan that sounds exciting, it sounds interesting, and critically, that it's going to attract funding.
Sure. Great. Holly?
No, I agree with what was said, and I think that one of the other things that from what stands out is both your CV, your research statement, your teaching, all of this materials, you can make it clear that you actually read the job ad, right? I mean, how many times do we tell our students, did you read the syllabus, right? And I think it's the same kind of idea. If it's a research R1 school, then in your CV, after your name and credentials should be your public. Yeah, exactly. Read the syllabus. It should be your publications, and then your grants, and then your teaching, right? So ordering the CV in the order that you can tell is important by knowing the university you're applying to, I think is critical. Same with, I know a lot of folks that apply to teaching, small liberal arts colleges that emphasize teaching, and everything in their research statement was about research that would not be done there. Or here at ODU, we don't have a BSL3, a biosafety level 3 kind of environment. And I've seen so many applicants apply for things here that would not be able to do their research on our campus. And so doing your due diligence and background to demonstrate that you actually understand the university you're applying for and what their values are, I think can really be reflected in all of your statements and your CV simply by reordering. You can't add to it, or you shouldn't add to it at the last minute by creativity, but certainly putting the right emphasis and the right things can really demonstrate. You have to caveat emptor, like if people have gone to the website and like, I'm going to work with so and so, and you're like, so and so hasn't published since before I was born. So be smart in how you pick your relevance to them, but I think that that's something that I've seen quite often.
Lisa.
Yeah, I was just going to address the teaching statement because I haven't heard a lot of comments about that. But if you are applying to a position where teaching is going to be, at least a substantial amount of your time, then it's to your benefit to put some work into that teaching statement. And what I'm looking for in a teaching statement is, what's your general philosophy about education? What do you think education should be about for, the students that you're going to be teaching? You may be teaching majors, you may be teaching non-majors, and perhaps, how you go about engaging those two different audiences is different. I'm also going to be looking for evidence that you have taught something, and something usually that is relevant to the position that you are applying for. And then lastly, I would like to know, what you think you are capable of teaching at my institution and within the department that you're applying to.
Great. So a related question came up in the Q&A here. Do R1 search committees ever consider teaching experience to be of high importance? And before anybody answers that, I really want to say that there are still going to be wide variations in the answer to that question at R1s, depending on which departments and which schools you're applying to. So with that, I want to hear the panel's thoughts.
I can say from Oklahoma State, the answer is a big yes. So I've been serving in one committee. I don't have much experience, but I have seen discussions nailing down to the detail of the teaching letter, how this recommender describe the teaching activities of the candidate as part of building up the decision to hire someone, which will be teaching, let's say, calculus 1, 2 for classes of 30, 35 students. So it's a big yes.
I have a follow-up question on this aspect. Sorry.
I don't know. I just maybe want to add to that so we have some diversity of perspective on that, because I would actually, in my experience, I'm in an R1 university, and actually teaching matters a lot here, especially when it comes to our promotion and evaluation. However, at the hiring stage, I would say that teaching experience is not a particularly critical factor. I think we want to see that you have potential as a teacher, that you're a good communicator, that you have a reasonable philosophy and ideas about teaching, and important. But it's more important what you do once you get here. So at least here, that's what I would say. But again, there's going to be different perspectives.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and my curiosity was, for instance, like for research, like me, like I didn't have like teaching experience because my PhD in Paris was in a research institute, like the French NIH. So I was not in a college. I was not in contact with students. So I have not teaching experience. So for me, the hardest part of my application was writing the teaching experience because I really didn't know like what to write. So I had like mentoring aspect, of course, to discuss and like tutoring during workshop, but I feel that my application, of course, is lacking in that because I never structured a syllabus for a class. So I want to know how to cover this when there is this lacking teaching, and if it's do you think it's a big issue like for department?
Well,
Go ahead.
go ahead. Well, I just felt a little responsible to respond to that, given that I said that, we don't necessarily require so much teaching experience. And to say that, if you don't have a lot of teaching experience to draw from, it does mean that you've got a little more work cut out for you to develop a case that you can contribute effectively to teaching. But it's not impossible. I think you just have to maybe do some homework and reading about pedagogy and things like that. Talk to people who have more experience. You've got to come with some ideas, because ultimately, if that's part of the job that you're hired to do, you're going to have to do it. But I would say just, strictly the teaching experience per se, you can get around it, but it's going to take more work. And the other thing I'll say too, if you have a lot of teaching experience, you can't just assume that you're okay. Right? Like maybe to contribute in the role at a certain job, you need, you still need to showcase that you can do it well, even if you've done it before.
I mean, recommendations for if you don't have if you have no teaching experience, I think you're right to focus on some of the research mentoring work you've done, but also I don't think it would be out of line. I think it'd be maybe quite strong to say, like, I've not had teaching experience, but let me show you a course description plus a syllabus for a course that I would be interested and passionate about teaching at your institution, right? And because it would demonstrate you're able to generate content. It would be a way to demonstrate, like, hey, I can actually do this independently on my own, and I'm not going to be completely underwater teaching a 1-1 and trying to get my research going, or whatever the course load is. I'll say that when I was applying for schools during my postdoc, I picked up like a visiting professorship on purpose to teach one class, just to say I have like this one, I got this one class, right, that I can just fill 3 pages with. And I don't know if it was helpful. I never asked, actually. I'd like to think so.
you could at least see if you can still arrange to give a guest lecture in a class. I mean, it's not huge, but that's something. So go ahead, and that's something you do somewhat last minute.
Yes, thank you. Indeed, like that's what like I did. I gave like 1 hour like guest lecture to my advisor. She has like class and like in fall and like, in spring. And I also submit to the department a syllabus with a potential class. And so I didn't add it in the teaching statement. So I think that maybe this could be a great idea just to add the appendix with the syllabus that I would like to teach. I'm so sorry, I need to run away to the airport. I'm actually flying back home to Italy.
Safe travels to Italy.
Hours.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. So thank you so much for like all your answers, and like I hope the discussion will keep like being great. Thank you so much.
So there was another set of questions here that we had discussed with this panel that I think might be worth shifting to just a little bit, was really just sort of talking about the process. So where should people go to find job applications? How are committees formed? What does the process look like? What can people expect when they're applying for positions? And how should they be thinking about that as they go through the process?
At Lehigh, the committee is formed from the majority are from the department in which the person would be hired, and there's typically 1, if not 2, external members. So someone outside the department and hopefully outside Lehigh has 5 colleges in the university, so someone outside the college. to give a perspective. So I think if you're thinking about writing your application for a specific job and you really want that one, like that's the one you're really going to focus on, might not be a bad idea to take a hard look at the faculty in that department because they're going to be the ones, they will be the ones evaluating you, no question. And sifting through the, sorting the applicants.
So I also heard in there where to look for jobs. We intentionally post very, very broadly, and I personally emailed a lot of department chairs, program chairs of places that have large graduate programs so that we could advertise very, very broadly. A lot of minority serving institutions I targeted as well to make sure, that people who may be on the job market are aware that we are advertising for these positions. So we kind of have our standards too, Chronicles of Higher Education and highered.com and other places like that.
Nowadays we have like the ID jobs, infectious disease jobs. It's like most of my area, but there is a lot of things there. Like there is ecology, this is ecology. So maybe it's a tool to look for jobs.
Yeah, and one of the things I would just add to that, just the more specific you can be where you're looking, the more fruitful your listings are going to be. Flipping through science is great, but if you can go to something like IDD jobs, or I just posted the link to the MIDAS list of job openings, that's going to be more focused. But by all means, work the network and talk to your advisors. Because if one of my students is looking for a position and I can say, hey, oh yeah, I know so-and-so who I really know and respect is at an institution that's looking for something, and I can refer people to my colleague, then that's going to be probably the best way to get that in. Similarly, if I get a job application that comes with the note from somebody who is a trusted friend or colleague of mine, I'm gonna look at that very carefully. Lots of nodding heads here. I think the panel agrees. Very good. So the other question is just this question of the process. That one of the things I think that is different in the academic world, say from some of the non-academic world, is just the timelines. And in my experience, I would say that folks should not expect things to move quickly. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think the one thing you'll learn when you've done enough searches is the sheer number of steps that every step of the process takes to get approvals above the search committee as well. And I know we struggled this semester to get our job ad out because our university changed one of the internal softwares, and then somebody quit, and then this happened and the other thing happened. And so at any stage along the search, I think you could end up with a significant delay that has nothing more to do than irritate all of us and delay the process. But I've had a couple quote real world unquote jobs that went like within a week, and that just terrified me in their speed. But we are definitely more on the order of a year, so it's a different order of magnitude.
Maybe I'll just add something about process and what goes on behind the scenes in addition to that. In addition to timeline, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, including, sort of in terms of internal politics and things like that. When it comes to deciding on the scope of the position, and even after the ad is written on the search committee or within the department or with the administration, there are just so many things that you can't possibly anticipate or foresee or even understand. And a takeaway from that, not to just make you feel powerless, is that to me, it really stresses the importance of applying for a lot of jobs. If you're really set on a faculty position, you really have to apply for a lot of jobs because there's so much sort of so many unpredictable factors behind the scenes. You may think you're really suitable for something, but there's some reason behind the scenes why you're not, or something else, or maybe there's a job that you don't think so much of, but actually you're a great fit for it and you just don't even realize it. So it really is a numbers game. And I think because of so much that you can't control and can't see, it's really important to broadcast your applications pretty widely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that can also happen is that not hearing anything from the search committee, in the limit, of course, long enough time, it does become a signal of bad news. But even after an interview, you might go arbitrary amounts of time before hearing things, and there's no shame in getting the job because the first pick didn't want it or turned it down, right? So if that is something that delays things, then sometimes that's the way it works. So I'm going to pick on Josh now a little bit, because Josh, you've been sort of quiet, but you also have made some comment about having a fairly unique path to where you were. So I think it's worth talking a little bit about people who didn't go sort of, quote, the usual route and all of the different ways that people can end up in their positions. Would you mind sort of telling your story in that a little bit?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. Yes, sorry that I haven't been talking so far. Like, I honestly can't speak to much of this stuff at all. I haven't had to write a teaching statement or anything like that. I didn't apply to an advertised position. I sort of created a position for myself through a series of collaborations and successful grant applications and things. So, but if anyone has is applying for K funding, career development funding, mentored through the NIH, that's pretty much the route that I have the experience with. So basically the way it happened for me was I did my PhD, and my PhD supervisor, Dr. Margaret Kosek, has now become like good friend, collaborator, long-time mentor of mine. But we established a very good working relationship, and during my PhD, I was already like submitting grants with her that had little budget lines for salary for me and things. And one of those grants funded my postdoc. It was to NASA. Then when Dr. Kosek moved universities, I went with her as a research scientist, with the understanding that the clock started ticking at that point, that the job started, and I would be applying for K funding, out just I don't know what the word is, just frantically. And I ended up applying 4 times to the NIH for K funding. The first, but it was like 2 grants with resubmission. So the first one was like not related to MIDAS stuff at all. It was about like pediatric liver disease. Unsuccessful the first time, resubmitted. While they were considering that for the next deadline, I submitted a totally different MIDAS relevant one. The first idea got turned down on the resubmission. The second one almost got it the first time, got it the second time. And so that's how I came to be working on this sort of bioinformatics stuff, was because I applied to the NIAID, and they used the K parent funding mechanism to fund bioinformatics and disease modeling. And that's Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases. So it's it's mostly infectious disease stuff and very relevant to MIDAS. And then, once I had that grant, I had backing from the school. I had a letter saying that, if Dr. Colson is successful, we'll create a assistant professor position for him. And it sort of came about that way. And I also negotiated a bit of teaching into that as well. So that's how it happened for me. I've been quite fortunate and haven't had to do job searching for very many years. So sorry, guys. I feel bad for you all.
No, but that's actually that's a good case in point there, Josh, because that is a pathway that may not be obvious to people who haven't been in worlds that do a lot of NIH funding. And I'm in a medical school where this is very common, where somebody is a postdoc, applies for a K grant, and the most common K grant there is the K99R00, which gives you a couple of years of research funding as a faculty member. And this is often something that a postdoc can parlay directly into a faculty job if they have that kind of funding. And sometimes it's at their institution, or sometimes they can take it somewhere else. But those positions usually don't involve something where there's been a posted ad. It's that they get the grant, and that paves the way in. So that's very common, and not really something that, once you're at the postdoc end of your postdoc, that you want to necessarily. You're probably a little bit late for that, but for graduate students, I think if you're thinking about going into an academic world, and you might want to do the kind of research where you would be going out for external funding to, find some way to write a grant, whether it's an NIH F31, which is the NIH graduate individual graduate grants, or there is a comparable mechanism in NSF, and I don't know the nomenclature for it off the top of my head. Is it GRFP or something like that, I want to say, but find those things and try to do them while you're a graduate student if you can, and that can make a big difference, because it shows you've put in the effort to go down that path. You know what it's about, and ideally you've shown some success.
I would add to that, even if it's unsuccessful, it still shows you're able to, that you're doing this, right? You already shows you're starting the game before you get the job, which is a classic sort of thing that people look for. You're already doing the job.
I'll actually add that most of the search committees I've been on include biologists who come from pretty different fields, and so that sometimes they have different expectations and things they're looking for. And I will say that there are some people out there who could be on a search committee that you apply to, who maybe, funding success is almost sort of an expectation for them. And, in some areas like ours, I would say it's not super common necessarily for an early career person to have that demonstrated success. And so I wouldn't necessarily look for it as a prerequisite, but other people may. So I think at least giving it a shot when reasonable is a good idea. It can only help.
Yeah, I will say like I said, I've been very fortunate, and things lined up for me very well, but they very nearly didn't, and there are big drawbacks. Like if I hadn't got the funding when I did, I was 4 years into postdoc, and I was going to have to leave academia. I have a family and stuff, and it was really down to the wire. That came through basically on my Hail Mary last shot at getting K funding. And of course, I'm 2 years into this 5-year K grant, and already I'm looking 3 years ahead to lining up, what's going to fund my position when this comes to an end. And, that's the sort of, a 3 to 5 year ahead time frame that people in my position are focusing on.
Yeah, and a real good point to make there is that this panel is, I'm going to say, a complete, a wonderful example of survivorship bias, in the sense that you're talking to people who have found the positions and who are moving forward. my thinking now is that MIDAS should have another webinar sometime in the mid or near future about sort of alternative paths and talking about the people who didn't go into academia, because that is sometimes what happens to folks. And I know I feel very lucky that my path has worked out to my advantage, and I'm not going to go into the details. I'll just say it's a lot more non-standard even than Josh's, but that's a story for another time, perhaps. Tom has thrown out a good question here. Any comments or suggestions for what people should not do, or mistakes you've seen people make that hurt their chances or sabotage their efforts in some ways? I have a couple of thoughts on that, but I'll throw that out to the panel.
I just was on a one that I've seen that happened quite frequently, almost I think 99% of the applicants it was for a teaching position, where you would assume the teaching statement should be fairly important in that application. And 99% of the applications in the teaching statement discussed like, really want to connect with students, and it's really important for me to, they're great and I'm very passionate about them. And there was a lot of emphasis on how passionate they were, and almost no information about their philosophy or like some structured course content that they may have developed and want to develop further. I think I was shocked by how frequent that was or has been in my experience in those teaching statements. We talked a little bit about you applied to an R1 or a research-focused place. Lehigh is certainly research-focused, but don't waste like a teaching statement on talking about how you can't wait to, I can't wait to have amazing experiences. Like, what does that mean, right? That's something I've seen that doesn't sabotage you, but boy, it doesn't help you. It don't help you at all.
I have a
Yeah,
question.
I would. Oh,
So,
go ahead, Lucas.
and the question would be, is there any sabotage on the research statement you guys would think someone would have to avoid? Don't put that on your research statement. Sorry.
I was just going to say I second that, and I think one of the most important things you can do is to tailor your application materials to the institution that you're applying to. There are oftentimes applications that are submitted and it says something like, I'm very excited to apply to University of Virginia. I'm at Old Dominion University. So you see mistakes like that. While they're not big mistakes, they are a bit of a letdown for the search committee at this institution. So, I think pay attention to those little things. And I don't think it's necessary that you have to completely rewrite everything that you submit, but just tailoring it. If research is the emphasis, that to me should come first in your CV, in your cover letter, with teaching second. If it's a teaching institution, then emphasize that in your materials, CV and cover letter in particular. So, and then I think, these broad statements where, I have no idea what you really can do or want to do, even though you may be very passionate about it. Those are not helpful either, because I have to, come up with sort of my own interpretation of what I think the applicant can do.
I'll maybe add one or two more in there. But to me, the mistakes I think of are mostly about omitting things or not doing things, but I'll toss them in there anyway. One is don't not have a web presence. Like at a minimum, you really should have a Google Scholar profile. This is almost like what Holly said earlier about not numbering things on your CV. Like, people are going to look, it makes it easier for them to evaluate you and stuff. So just do all that stuff. Another thing I'll say is don't try to go it completely alone. Like try to seek advice from people, your mentor, other people who have gotten jobs recently who you may know, get feedback from them, maybe see their applications. When I was at the stage of applying for jobs, there were one or two people who I saw their applications, and it really helped me a lot to think about sort of what it takes and how I might want to approach mine.
Just one quick thought, don't lie. I hope that goes without saying, but I have been involved in a search where we found out that the PhD was fabricated. And I've been on searches where the papers that we went looking for didn't exist as well. So in the, I don't know, 30 some search committees I've been on, I've probably seen all the different ways, but you may not feel like you have enough, but there are ways of making what you are sellable without stretching it.
Okay, we have a couple of questions in the chat here, the Q&A, and I'll sort of take this first one. Basically, somebody's writing about demonstrating funding success and wants to know how to list or take credit for a grant that you might have co-authored, say, with a supervisor who is actually the PI, where you are not listed on it and you can't be discovered with that anywhere. And how to do this. Should you only list on your CV grants that you're a PI on? I want to throw out, I'm not going to touch the CV question, but I want to say that is exactly something that should really go in that PI/recommender's letter about you. Because if the PI really says, "Hey, I would never have gotten this funding if it weren't for Jim's help on it," or something like that, I think that's a really strong piece that there really should go in there. Personally, I don't think it's wrong to list the CV, the grants that you're not PI. I've got a bunch of co-I grants that I list all of them on my CV, but others.
Yeah, I just want to add, I completely agree, Harry. However, I think this is something that can be easily solved and helped by just having a brief chat with your PI and just say, hey, I played a role in this grant. I was thinking about putting that on my CV. Just want to make sure that sounds good to you. And by the way, I hope you'll mention something about that in your letter. That way you're on the same page, because you just want to make sure there's not some misunderstanding somehow about that. But in most cases there won't be, and it never hurts to just check, but do both.
Something sort of related. I think as long as you do it politely, it's not sort of out of line to ask your letter writers to focus on a certain topic that you might want to highlight with them. Like that they working on a proposal or something like this, right? If you just sort of politely say, would you mind in the recommendation mentioning that, it would be really helpful. I think it's always okay when students ask that of me. I don't know what other panelists think about that.
Yeah, totally in agreement. Like for the K application, there's a ton of letters from different mentors and things like that, and it's important that the documents talk to each other, and even if you're going the other route and getting the letters sent separately, be clear when you ask for the letter, like what you want the letter to say and what you've emphasized. It doesn't have to be like telling the person what to write, but it can be like, oh, for this job, I really think it's important to emphasize this. Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Okay, another question from the Q&A here, which I think is an interesting one for more of a career transition kind of thing. So if applying for an R1 job is someone who is already an assistant professor at an R2 institution or other non-R1 institution, will that impact how R1 committees look at your application?
Well,
I'll chime in.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Alex.
No, it's all right.
I was going to say, just being at, another institution, no, it's going to be the stuff that you've done. So if you've been, at a teaching institution for 5 years and now you're trying to move into an R1, but you don't have the research experience, your application is not going to be competitive. But we see quite a few applicants who are at other institutions. They either want to move laterally or they want to move up, and we review those just as we would any other applicant from where they're coming from in their professional development. So
yeah, I totally agree with Lisa that other considerations. Your qualifications are going to rule the day on your competitiveness. I'll just add a slight take that if anything, it provided that that you're a competitive applicant. If anything, it actually could maybe be a plus, or one thing that I would could imagine us thinking is like, oh, well, it makes sense for why they're applying to our institution. Like it would be a move up for them. So we can see this. We think that, okay, maybe we'd have a chance to recruit them. So if anything, it may be a positive as long as you're a strong applicant.
Yeah, my thought on that one is also, in that case, I would really stress the kind of work that you've been doing, say in a letter, because if you've managed to get a couple publications a year with a 2-2 teaching load or a 3-3 even or something like that, that's really impressive. And that shows that you can get the work done. So I don't think anybody looking at somebody who's coming in with a big teaching load is going to compare them to somebody who's just coming off a postdoc for productivity, for publication, because it's just different worlds. So explain who you are, what you've been doing, and why you think you're the right candidate for that, and demonstrate the value, I think, would be the way to go about it. So we're hitting close to the top of the hour. Does anyone have any final questions or from the panel comments that they'd want to make? This is obviously a fraught discussion with a lot of challenges that people face, and I'm sure we haven't answered a lot of the questions people might come up with. But I will say, just as an offer here, that one of the things that as the coordination center, the MIDAS coordination center, that we really try to work on is to foster and promote junior people in the field. And so I know I'd be happy to chat with anybody who wanted to have a discussion about that or was looking for another set of opinions or guidance on things. And here are some folks who on the panel have taken their time to meet with the group of people of younger folks. And so these if you're looking for a job, the people on this panel are the kind of people you want to work for, because they're the one who care enough to take this time. And so one of the other things I'll say is there's a view to looking for a job, which is to say that you want to walk into the room with a little bit of that confidence that says that you're looking for them to convince you that it's the right job for you to take, not the other way around. And so I know it's hard sometimes to maintain that feeling, but the sort of fake it till you make it, there's some validity to that. So try, if you can do that, then more power to you. But with that, I think we should thank our panelists. Really appreciate all of your time and effort in coming to join in and your feedback. We will get this up soon on our YouTube page, and we'll share the link, and really appreciate all of your time. We will be back in January with the next MIDAS webinar. And as always, if you have something you want to see in a webinar or you want to present, please get in touch and let us know. And in the meantime, I want to wish everyone a great holiday season and best wishes for a great start to 2025.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Harry. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
Thank you.